All right, well, it is 7 o'clock, so we'll go ahead and get started. Thank you for coming to our third session of Native Planting 101. I'm Amanda Newell. I'm with Cascadia Conservation District, and my colleague Kirk is here as well. You'll hear from him in a little bit. We just wanted to say thank you to the Washington Department of Ecology for providing the funding for our staff to coordinate this workshop. And then, of course, thank you so much to all of our amazing speakers. So for those of you who aren't familiar with Cascadia, we're a non-regulatory organization and we work throughout Chelan County, encouraging the wise stewardship and conservation of all natural resources. We're governed by a board of supervisors, and then our staff work directly with local landowners and residents to meet any conservation needs. So we have a lot of different programs, technical assistance and cost share type programs. And then we also have a lot of really great partners too. So we just really encourage folks to reach out to us with any natural resource concern you have, and we're happy to talk through it with you. And it's likely we have a program that can help you, but if we don't, we're happy to connect you with one of our various partners. And then so one of the focuses of this series is on how native plants are beneficial to the environment that we live in here in North Central Washington, and how that relates to water quality and all the benefits that come from natives. So some of them here down in the Did You Know, they're obviously well adapted to our climate. We have wet winters and dry summers, so these plants need to do well in those conditions. These plants will require less water, so they're easier to get established and less work once they are fully established. And then they're naturally resistant to the pests and diseases that we have in this area. They improve water quality because we don't have to fertilize them as often, and we don't have to use the pesticides on them since they're already adapted to this environment. And then also just saving on resources and encouraging a sense of stewardship when you use native plants. So I mentioned that Cascadia has a lot of different programs and specialties. So we have teams that provide agriculture assistance, things like irrigation upgrades and soil health practices, wildlife habitat, those kinds of projects. And we also have a couple of archaeologists on staff. And then we do a lot of community outreach and engagement. So things like these webinars. We also do social media and website, printed quarterly newsletter, and other brochures and print information that we take to a lot of community events around the area, lots of them coming up in the next couple months. And then again in the fall. And then we also have a couple of bilingual staff. So we've been really trying to step up our bilingual outreach in the last couple of years. Another big program area is wildfire preparedness and recovery. So we offer cost share programs and home hardening programs. We do a chipping program and yard waste disposal days at participating transfer stations. We've gotten more involved with prescribed fire in the last couple of years and do these learn and burns on private property where folks can come out and learn how to, what are all the parameters that are important for a prescribed fire. And then also post-fire restoration. And then we have a stream habitat restoration crew. So they work in our streams and wetlands. They'll install native plants along the riverside. And then they also do beaver dam analogs as part of our stream restoration. And then youth education, we try to have something for all grade brackets, K through 12. So we have a Wheat Week and after school programs, summer camps, those are geared more towards our elementary students. And then Kids in the Snow, Kids in the Forest, Kids in the Orchard is the middle school level. And then Kids in the Creek is for high school. So we really try to see the kids at all different stages. You can see that one picture down kind of bottom left. We have some high school students involved in some of our restoration projects. They're helping build a beaver dam analog. So it's been really cool to have them connected with the local natural resource folks. And sorry, I could talk about the youth ed all night, so I gotta move on. one last thing on this slide, we'd like to invite you all to our conservation fair. It's coming up on Tuesday, the 25th, so just a few days away. Great chance to come meet our staff and learn more about our programs, and we'll have refreshments. And then you can also vote in our Board of Supervisors election if you'd like to, and stay for our prescribed fire class later into the evening. So just some contact information here. Like I said before, feel free to reach out to us with any questions you have. And then I will turn it over to Kirk.
All right. Well, welcome everyone. And for those of you who've been for the other sessions, welcome back. We have, after tonight, they have one more virtual session on March 26th, next Wednesday, Al Murphy. And he's a retired forester, wildfire expert, and he'll be talking about using native plants for our new environment we're headed into. But after that virtual session, then in May, we have a in-person event. And so May 10th from 3 to 5, we're limiting it, as I said, to 25 people, just so we can have it a really tight-knit group and be able to really answer questions. And our speakers will be there. We'll be wandering around looking at native plants, and they'll give us their thoughts, the benefits and drawbacks of each type of plant. So it's a lot of fun. But because we're limiting it to 25 people, it is going to be a lottery if we have more than that sign up. So, in just a minute, I'll put it in the link to the registration form in the chat, and you can sign up if you're available. And I just put that in. So tonight, we're excited to have Natalie McClendon presenting about what she's done with her city lot over in Yakima. So Natalie said she was introduced to the natural world and gardening by her botanist father just a couple of years ago, she said. And after then 30 years in Bellingham experimenting with gardening, I love that you said experimenting after 30 years. So I guess you never have it all figured out. But she's relearning that process in Yakima, where she bought this city lot about 3 years ago. She's on the board of the Central Washington Chapter of the Washington Native Plant Society. So again, we're really excited to have you, Natalie, and look forward to learning from you this evening. So we'll turn it over to you.
Okay, thank you. Just a correction there. It was decades ago that I was introduced to the natural world by my father. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen now. Hopefully this works.
And everyone feel free, of course, to put questions in the chat, and there'll be some breaks and we can answer questions at that point.
Okay. Okay. So as Kurt said, I live in Yakima. This is the house when I bought it 3 years ago. I've had 3 full summers. I think about them in terms of summers, because that's the growing season. And this is what the house looked like. This is the real estate photograph. Nothing in the front yard except grass. And okay, there we go. And the backyard, mostly just grass. The trees, there's 2 sets of trees, and I'll show you a plan of the yards in a minute. There are 3 sets of trees in the yard, and kind of clipped things that nobody really was interested in. Certainly not me. So I'm going to talk today basically 4 things: assessing the resources on your property, using my own lot as an example, what my lot actually looks like and what I've done, just to kind of give you an orientation, and then planting and growing in the dry garden, pretty much nuts and bolts, my process of doing research and trying to figure it out. And then some pretty pictures, because there aren't any in the rest of it. So that's kind of what we're going to do tonight. Obviously, one of the most important things to do is to understand what your water is in your for your area. I want to highly encourage you to sign up for Ag Weather Net if you haven't are not familiar with it. It's a WSU extension program. It's agricultural weather stations all over the state, and you can get very detailed information about your locale. Hopefully, you'll have a weather station near you. Being near the mountains, we have a lot of microclimates. It's kind of hard to know exactly what your climate and water precipitation is. This is just an example of a graph, and it's kind of hard to see, but it's a year-long average. The very light shows that our cumulative average here in Autanum Weather Station, which is just excuse me, southwest of edge of Yakima, is 8 inches of rain. That's the average. And we're a little bit above average right now. It's been a fairly wet year. The darker blue is the current year. This is of course starting in January, so you can't tell what we got in the fall in this chart. But this is really important, useful information, no matter where you are. The other issue is your property's water rights, and some of you may be very familiar with your water rights, and others may have know nothing about it. Here in Yakima, in the older neighborhoods, we have senior water rights for outdoor water, which is separate from the house potable water, which means we probably will never be cut off. On the other hand, state law could change. If we are really in a crunch, water-wise, the agricultural uses are going to be very much priority over um, having green lawns in the city. So you never know, but that's an important thing to know. Of course, also if you are metered water on you using metered water to water your garden, you're very aware of how much that costs and wanting to keep that at the minimum. Oops, let's see. Also, soil fertility. I was kind of caught off guard by the fertility of the soil. Um, I have used for a number of years University of Massachusetts Extension's soil testing lab. They're fairly inexpensive, like $35, I think, plus the postage to mail them a sample. And this is just a portion of the report that I have. And if you can read this, it says phosphorus is way off the charts. High potassium is, 10 times what it needs to be. Calcium, double, magnesium, 5 times. I looked at this for a long time trying to figure out what the heck was going on. And then I realized I have the same similar situation, at least for some of these macronutrients in our garden in Bellingham. And I realized what's the common denominator there, and that is we're in the ashfall region of volcanoes. And so, when the first white settlers came to the Yakima Valley, they all they had to do was apply water, and they had incredibly rich soil. And this is the same situation. I am in the bottom of the valley, not on the sides of the hills or the ridges where the soil is very thin and rocky and poor. So you're going to want to know which which that is. And of course, in the mountains, things change from one place to the other very quickly. So I really highly recommend you do a soil test. This tells me I never have to fertilize except for nitrogen, because nitrogen is easily depleted from one season to the next. And so that's really all I'm doing. Saves me a lot of time and effort. Um, of course, soil structure is the other one, and we had a whole other session on soil structure a couple of weeks ago. In my case, I have almost pure silt loam. It's soil that was deposited by the 40-some Missoula floods that washed silt out of eastern Washington and up into the foothills, foothill valleys of the east side of the Cascades. I found when digging my vegetable garden 3 rocks, and there's almost no clay, almost no sand. It's really wonderful soil. Uh, yeah, okay, I'm trying to get the right angle on this screen to see this. Of course, temperature extremes are really important as well. Again, in the mountains, in the valleys, you have microclimates, and you're going to want to figure out what yours is. This is AgWeatherNet again. And I guess I didn't mention if you can create a free account and then you get access to a lot more information on specific weather station data. So this is the pink is the extreme, the blue is the extreme on the cold side, pink on the hot, and the green in the middle, or yeah, the green in the middle is the average. And then the lines are the current year. And this is an average from, what is it? It says 1998 to 2005. So this would, if you can find a weather station at AgWeatherNet that's near you or has the similar kind of conditions, maybe not quite so near you, this would help you a lot in understanding what your frost, your hardiness zone is, and what you can expect in way of extreme temperatures on the top end. The other thing, resources, is existing trees. In my case, I had I had no trees in the front yard. I had 3 clumps of trees in the backyard that were all the invasive Siberian elm. And the roots had completely grown into every corner of the lot, as far as I could tell. Certainly, when it came to digging the vegetable garden, which is the first thing that I did the first spring, I had to cut with a shovel the entire area before I could rototill because the roots were so invasive. You want to know what, I mean, those trees were basically sucking the water out of the area, so I wasn't going to be able to grow much else. Couldn't even get grass to stay green. I did attempt it for a while. The other thing is, are the trees on the lot from around here? In other words, are they Gary oaks or ponderosa pines or something else that grows outside of town naturally? Or are they from the eastern United States, which most city trees are? The oaks, the maples, the sycamore. I have tulip trees. I have an elm I'll show you in a minute. these are all from Eastern North America. They need 40, 50, 60 inches of rain a year. And so you may not think about the fact that you're watering your tree, but you are when you're watering your grass. And so you can't just decide to go xeric on your lot and quit watering that tree. You're going to kill it. Maybe not next year, but eventually. They need much more water than than we get here. Of course, I also just noted that we get an average of 8 inches. 8 inches is very different than 50 inches of moisture naturally. So be aware of the kind of trees you already have, the kind of trees you might find in the nursery that you might want to put in your yard. Of course, the age of the current trees, their condition might determine whether or not you want to bother to keep them alive. Maybe they are at the end of their lifespan. They may be, we've got in my neighborhood silver maples that are very susceptible to rotting from the inside out, and they are probably 100 years old at this point. And they probably need to come down pretty soon. Um, but you need to assess all that. What do you want to keep? What's worth keeping? And where you want to maybe, the trees are the first thing you need to plant. So maybe putting in some, as I said again, Gary oak is really the only reasonable deciduous tree in the shrub steppe, um, and or ponderosa pines and some of the others that are suitable a little farther north or up the mountains a little bit from where I am, where they get more than 8 inches of rain. The other thing about the trees is the shade and the sun. And this is a picture of standing on my front porch looking across the street. This is 100, I'm sure, 100-year-old, maybe older, elm, an American elm, still alive. When I was a teenager in Lincoln, Nebraska, the elms that lined the streets of the city, of the old neighborhoods of the city, all died from Dutch elm. And I was kind of shocked that when I realized that this tree was an elm because I thought they were all dead. Anyway, the isolation of Yakima is probably what saved it. But this tree put shade on my front yard in the middle of the summer. So it actually um, makes it a little less harsh. It gets plenty of sun mornings and afternoons, but you need to be aware of what the shade and not necessarily just the shade on your own property. I have personally decided to go with artificial shade if I need shade somewhere. Put up as one of those sail tarp thingies, which I haven't done yet. So anyway, um, so here is my front yard. Um, this is looking from the street to the house. The house faces south, and so this is all in full sun, except for that tree shading it uh, in the middle of the summer. And I have everything that you see here, the planters, the sidewalk are there, the driveway, the gravel. Can you see my pointer? Okay, I wasn't sure whether that showed up or not. Yeah, the gravel I added, and we'll see it in process in a minute. I decided that if I was going to plant things in the front yard that wasn't grass, I didn't want people driving up and parking and getting out of the passenger side and stomping all over my plants. So there's no sidewalks in our neighborhood. So this is my kind of half sidewalk along the street. Um, So here's the yard in process. I let it burn out over the summer, the first summer, and um, then hired a landscape company to basically strip the sod off the whole front yard. And the reason for that is you don't need organic matter. If I were to kill it in some way, cover it with cardboard or plastic or spray it or whatever, I'd still have all that organic matter and sod. And the the natural shrub step doesn't have hardly any organic matter in the soil, and it's not needed. And so this was the quickest, easiest way to just rip it all off and haul it away, and somebody can compost it. So you can see they've carved in the places where they're going to put the paths, and so it's ready to go. Um, After they did that, oops, why did that do that? Just a minute. There we go. Um, okay, let's try again. Um, dug a dry stream in the front yard and attached the downspout on that corner of the house underneath. The landscape guys actually put this pipe in, and then I dug the dry stream in here. I've actually, now that I've lived with it a couple of years, I mean, I like it as a landscape feature, but I don't like putting water there because if I have any water, it's going to go into the bottom of that dry stream and just help weed seeds and other things germinate. And I don't want the stream to actually grow stuff. So I think what I'm going to do is redirect this downspout to over along here. I have a couple of things like a Rocky Mountain maple that I want to get to grow big enough to shade the west side of the sunroom a little bit. And I don't think it's going to grow much if I don't. It's living fine without any additional water, but it's going to grow very slowly. And that's basically, I mean, that is the issue with no water. Everything's going to grow slowly. Okay. Here's the dry stream. You can see the gravel walk here, and this is the corner of the house, and it comes under to here, comes out from these rocks and runs down here. And it rarely rains enough to actually wa have water running in it. Whereas when my grandchildren convinced me to run the hose down the downspout, we get some water in it. And so this is I was testing my little waterfall in my dry stream. And obviously this is before anything has been planted. This was taken when I was just getting the rocks placed. So this year I put blue twinkle lights in the dry stream bed. So I had a blue river in my front yard. That was my um, my Christmas lights. Okay, here's the backyard. Um, the orientation is different. We're looking, um, the house is over here and we're looking from left to right to the back of the lot. And as I said, I put the vegetable garden in first. It is irrigated with a drip system on a timer. And then the perennial border has a drip system that I just um, hook up to the hose when I decide it needs to be watered. And nothing else is irrigated. So I don't water the front yard at all. And the backyard is those two areas. except for one more place I'll show you in a minute. Um, so that just kind of gives you an orientation of the lot. One of the things, so in this last year, I had um, the house resided. You notice it's a different color now, and I had new gutters put in too, and these gutters, the two corners of the house that came down on the driveway side of the house, basically dumped water onto the driveway where you would walk, and it was just like, okay, now I have a patch of ice, and which seemed kind of pointless. So I had them redirect the gutters to this very small bed along the driveway. One bed, there's two beds, one gets the water, one does not. And I have put a little drip system in there that I use as needed. This is my dedicated perennial herb bed. It's on the east side of the house, so it doesn't get cooked in the summer. Then it worked really well this last year. The other thing was I have this ugly metal shed in the backyard that I was going to get rid of, but decided I really needed something for outdoor storage. These things don't come with gutters, and so I just screwed some gutter um, onto the side of the building and directed it to this shrub at the base here. Hopefully will grow up and disguise my ugly shed. This is a golden currant, which needs more than 8 inches of rain. I think it's more like 15. I'm not exactly sure, but this this will actually double at least the amount of moisture it gets um, in the year. And I did the other side as well for a honeysuckle that I hope will grow over the shed roof and hide it that way. So eventually I'll just hide the whole thing. Um, Here another look at the plan. Um, these red spots, red circles are where the trees were, and these were just cut down and um, poisoned to kill the roots, which doesn't happen instantaneously. And then I left a snag um, for ostensibly for wildlife with this one, although I haven't killed it yet. I haven't figured out. It's harder to kill it when you don't have a handy stump. Anyway, and this is native shrub border. It's all very small now. I've planted a Gary oak back here, um, and other pretty much shrub step plants that won't need any water. I have decided though, as my son points out, things will grow faster if you water them. And so I may start watering them just a bit, just so they will get bigger faster. But they are a variety, they are species that do not need water in the summer because they're native shrub step plants. So if and when I quit watering them, they will be fine. I mean, and when I say water, I mean like once a month water. Um, all right. So maybe we'll stop there, because I'm going to go to the next topic if we have any questions.
Yeah, if you have any questions, go ahead and put them in the chat. We don't have any yet.
Okay. I feel like I'm zooming, but I know I've got a lot of material here. So, okay, let's go on.
Yep.
So that first year while I was waiting for fall to start the front yard to rip out the grass and start planting it I spent researching, and I had a hard time finding any really good information. But this book, High and Dry Gardening with Cold Hardy Plants by Robert Nold was a godsend. It's a great book. If you haven't run across it, it's in the Yakima Downtown Library, and if you're in the Yakima area, you could probably get it interlibrary. Um, he is Robert Nold is he's actually a penstemon expert and has written a few books on penstemons, but um, this book is his experience growing a garden with no additional water in the suburbs of Denver for 20 years. And so um, he knows what's cold hardy. His garden is certainly colder than Yakima. I don't know about up farther north of here, but probably similar, and as dry. And so his basic premise, there are four things, and we'll go through each of these: rejecting the accepted wisdom of traditional horticulture, a whole new catalog of plants, a new gardening technique, and a wholesome acceptance without reservation of the realities of the climates of the West. Um, we will go, oops, okay. We will go through here. Okay. Rejecting the accepted wisdom of traditional horticulture. I'm using this picture because to remind us all that shrub steppe and other desert plants grow deep roots. And if you look at any traditional gardening handbook, it says dig deep and loose, mulch it, add organic matter, fertilize it, and mulch it. And basically, you don't have to do any of that stuff. The roots will go deep. Whether you've loosened the soil or not, and you're not going to loosen them the number of feet down that those roots need to go anyway. It doesn't, the native soil does not have organic matter and it's not fluffy. And it doesn't need to be mulched for um, re for cooling the soil because the roots, for the most part, aren't on the surface of the soil, and they don't really care. I've decided not to mulch at all in my front yard. I know my dry garden in my front yard. It's because I decided, if you could put pebbles down as mulch, but it's really hard to weed through pebbles, and you end up just mixing dirt in with it when you are weeding stuff. You can't I bought myself a little shuffle hoe. I decided that was a good tool for just getting rid of the weed seedlings. And if you're not watering the surface, after the spring rains end, you get no seed germination, no weed seeds. I have had to weed in the spring, absolutely, on my hands and knees, inspecting weeds to see seedlings, to see if any of them were self-sowed plants from the plants that I had already put there or seeds that I had put out, um, and then get rid of all the other weeds. Once I've done that and it stops raining, I don't hardly have to do any weeding at all for the rest of the season, literally. So, it's a preference but on the pebbles mulch, but I find it easier not to. Okay, a whole new catalog of plants. Noel's book is literally over 300 pages of plant descriptions. And in that, if nothing else, that is really helpful. But one of the things he points out is be sure you know what drought tolerant means when you're looking at plant descriptions, because what is a drought tolerant plant in a national gardening magazine is most likely a plant that can survive 3 weeks on the East Coast when you went away for vacation and forgot to arrange for somebody to water your garden. Um, Drought tolerant is it's variable depending on what your climate is. Um, Obviously, we're talking about in Yakima 8 inches of rain a year and no water basically for 6 months of the hot part of the year. Cold hardy is another challenge, and that's what the Knowles book of plants is really useful for because he's been growing these and experimenting with them in Denver. Um, One of the things I found is I'm not a purist about native, that is to say shrub step native. Because I'm gardening, doing this garden in my front yard, I want it to look fairly interesting and not just brown and crispy half the year or most of the year. So I've been looking for other plants that fit the conditions that I have, and um, plants from what I found is the mountains of northern Arizona has a kind of a similar um, climate to here. It gets colder in the winter than, down in the the valley, the flatlands of the desert of Arizona, but it has the heat and the long dry weather. So there are plants in other places. Um, let's see. So one of the things that I did while I was waiting for the fall to come and doing my research is I took Noel's book and I put it in a spreadsheet. And this is available to you. We'll put it. I didn't arrange for putting it in giving Kirk the link to put it in the chat, but we can make it available after the fact. Um, anyway, put them all in here. Let's go back to the top here. The type, the height, Latin and common names, they're all pretty much drought hardy and cold hardy. Some in this list are not native, um, but most of them are, leaf color and type, bloom color, etc. And I've added to the Knoll list with ideas from Wildflowers of the Pacific Northwest by Mark Turner and Phyllis Gustafson. And also there's a few others in here. Anyway, I've got bulbs, cacti, grasses, perennials, shrubs, and trees. And, there are some notes, like when we go to grasses, Noel says many of these grasses do best with a little water in the summer. Little notes like that. Um, anyway, well, the way I use this is I look at and see what's in the nursery. What can I actually buy? And then go to the list and see, is that something that is recommended for my area, for my conditions? So I don't just spend a lot of time thinking, ooh, that's a really neat plant, and try to go find it when it's just not available in the nurseries. So, okay, let's go back here. All right, and then I want to talk just briefly about the nurseries and just some little hints here. These are the three places that I mostly have gotten my plants from. And we'll go to each of these quickly. This is Mel Asher's nursery that who did the talk last week, and I understand she wasn't there to do a commercial, but I can tout it. And I want to point out this wonderful picture here is snowbrush, and that's what I have planted in my foundation beds in the front of the house. It's evergreen. It's completely hardy, drought hardy for our environment. And I'm hoping that it'll bloom like that one does. Anyway, this is the shrub page, and I want to point out the drought tolerant column here. She's got an X and then a double X. And there's not necessarily any um, definition of that. It's just more drought hardy with it with two X's. But you can see the big sagebrush is in a double X category, whereas some of these others are not. They're not quite as. Um, so, what you're looking for if you're going to plant a no water garden is you're going to want those drought tolerant from a nursery that knows what that means, not from the East Coast. Let's quickly go back here to tap-teal native plants. Tap-teal is in West Richland. For me in Yakima, it's relatively convenient, and I've been able to. This last year, I talked Ann, the owner, into allowing us to pick up our plants in Yakima. She brought all her Yakima orders up, so we didn't all have to drive down to West Richland, which I'd like to do that for Derby Canyon too. I want to show you, let's just look at the golden currant here. What she has here, this is a golden currant, and I mentioned that I planted it with with that downspout, giving it extra water. Here she has water needs 15 to 20 inches a year. So obviously it's not going to survive in my garden without extra water. And I'm hoping that by giving it the runoff from the shed, it will get enough to do fine. This is she has these on all of on pretty much all of her items here. Let's look at them out. The mock orange, again, 15 to 20 inches a year. So you can go to that and look at that. The other thing that I forgot to show you was on the Derby Canyon list, they have the links to more information many of those go to the website that Mark Turner runs, who did Wildflowers of the Pacific Northwest. And he has maps that show where the plant occurs. And so if it occurs, and it doesn't say it's riparian or something, if it occurs in Eastern Washington, it's likely to be a good drought tolerant plant. Okay, let's one more here, and that is High Country Gardens. Now, this is a nursery and it's been in business for a long time, and they have been actually breeding plants from natives. And so they have a lot of interesting cultivars of natives. Some of them happen to be like crosses and stuff. And I have a picture later of one of their plants that's one of my favorites. But this page is actually their very water-wise plants page. at which they also use the term xeric. They are from operating in the Western United States, so they have a better idea of what drought tolerant is. Again, you're going to want to compare it back to the list and see if it's likely to work. But they are mail order, so you can get stuff that you might not be able to get and get it shipped to you. Okay. All right, move on. Well, I'm running out of time here. A new gardening technique and the soil program 2 weeks ago covered this a little bit. As I pointed out, the plant's going to grow down. So dig a hole, fill it with water, let it soak in. Dig it deeper if you still need to, because sometimes the soil is so hard you can't dig very deep. Wash all the plant medium off the plant as when it comes out of the pot, because that's not what the plant needs. It needs to bond with the native soil and to send its um, roots straight down. And you've watered and given it a moist direction pointing down into the soil. You don't need to fertilize unless you have done a soil test and understand that you need a little more there. And I've already talked about the other mulching and stuff. One of the things that hurts my frugal heart is seeing people putting in a garden that they're not going to water, but they have to water it the first year and putting in a drip system to do that. This is my drip system, my temporary drip system. Quart milk jugs with holes punched in the bottom. Fill them up, put the cap on, turn them upside down, run over to the plant, turn them over, put them next to the plant, and loosen the cap so the water will come out. And you've just given them a quart of water. And you can do that however often you feel you need to in that first year or two that you want to water. And you're also not watering the rest of the soil that will just make for more weeds to grow. So, save yourself some money. The last one is a wholesome acceptance without reservation of the realities of our climate. I didn't really understand this until it got to be the middle of the summer and we were in the second, going on the third week of 100-degree weather, and I'm like worrying about my little plants. And I realized that, I picked the right plants. They are, I did the right job of planting them. They can do it. And if they can't, then I need to reevaluate if that's the right plant. One of the things that gardeners tend to do when they are experienced is they try to push the limits. The first year I was here, I went on a garden tour. It was like a fundraiser, and all the gardens looked like they were right out of Seattle. They were lush, plants jammed together, azaleas and hostas and ferns, and it's like, okay, fine. If that's not a native garden, that's not anywhere near. They weren't trying to do that. But if we want to grow a native garden, we can't, push those limits. We have to work within them. Now for the pretty pictures. This is the mock orange from High Country Gardens. It's a cultivar, so it's an improved from the native, and this is just its second year. I was shocked at how much it bloomed. Joshneria, also known as California fuchsia, now classified as an epilobium, and I've forgotten the name. It blooms all summer, no water. it basically stopped blooming when it started getting cold. Again, not a native here, but it's native farther south and it's hardy. It can take the cold of Yakima at least. We also grew it in our Bellingham garden. It doesn't mind getting lots of water, but it doesn't need it. Um, here's here's the first set of, okay, it's being slow. First set of California poppies and I think penstemon stricta, I can't remember which penstemon that is, in my front yard. And this plant here, it's not in bloom yet, but it is a desert 4 o'clock, and it's also not native. I got it from Tapteel Nursery, and you'll see in a minute what it does. It grew from nothing, died completely to the ground in the winter. Here we have blanket flower that happened to already be in the garden, poppies, culinary thyme. Um, I don't remember what kind of lavender it is. Lavender is pretty hardy. Um, and here's the snowbrush in the front bed. We've got more poppies and other things. This wild blue flax back here does great. And this is kind of June-ish. Um, oops. This is the um, desert 4 o'clock, and it bloomed in June, and it bloomed for quite a long time. And then in August, without any additional water, it put on another, I would say 50 blooms, making the size of the plant, doubling the size of the plant. Um, I was I was blown away, and I think it's because in the desert Southwest, there's a monsoon season in August. They get some cooler weather and some rain, and I think it sensed the shift in the nighttime temperature a little colder, and so it put on another flush of bloom. This is the sunset hyssop that Mel talked about last week. It really actually suffered this last year. It's been in the garden 2 years. First year was great. Last year was much drier. It could have used some water, but it's didn't die and it's coming up. So, you know, you just have to decide. This is from High Country Gardens. It's a sage, a salvia cross native. It literally bloomed from June to frost. This, if you see, there's dry leaves here. This picture was taken in October. Everything else is kind of brown up out here, and it's still blooming. And this is the last one. Here's my grandson enjoying the path through the California poppies. And the biggest mistake I've made is allowing them to go to seed without any restriction. So I now have lots and lots of California poppies coming up where I don't want them. And that is it.
All right.
So any
Awesome.
questions?
So, yeah,
We
we
out
have
of
lots of
time?
questions.
Wow, 7:59.
Um, yeah, some of these questions you've already answered, but one question, one of them that you haven't is, or at least I may have missed it. Did you start with seeds or starts, or how did you?
I mostly bought plants, starts. I did I put out a lot of seeds that I collected or found seed packets the first year, but it was so hard to distinguish them from the weeds. I did get a few penstemon and that the blue flax came up from the seeds that I scattered. But well, actually, what's been successful is the self-sowing. I have a number of buckwheats, the sulfur buckwheat, and I think that's the main one that has self-sowed. It's self-sowed the first year, and so I've got now 1-year-old seedlings. They're only like this big, but they're clearly buckwheat, and I probably need to move them around and get them in a better place, but some of them will stay where they are. But yeah, I didn't try to plant the whole front yard the first year. I only planted basically from the gravel path that cut through to the west. And then then the next year I planted another third up by the sidewalk, and then this fall I put a little I made a little island, a pier of extra soil with rocks for cactus along the drive near the driveway. So I'm kind of using the California poppies to just fill in, make it look like it's not too abandoned until I get some other things in, or the ones that I have there are bigger.
Okay. And somebody asked, is your front yard very dusty without mulch? And is that
Well, I live smack in the middle of town. We don't get a lot of wind. The if you don't walk on it, it develops a crust. So it's not gonna blow in that respect. I get dust in my backyard in the vegetable garden because with the drip system, I don't water the paths, but I walk on the paths and the paths get dusty, but there's not a wind issue.
and what are you noticing about insect populations, butterflies? Um, any changes after just
The
seeing it as a
one
lawn?
the one butterfly, I think the problem is that my garden is so isolated. I mean, everybody around me has green lawns. Okay, so it's so isolated that I'm not likely to get very many of the native butterflies. The one butterfly that I did identify that I have in my backyard is I'm not going to remember the name. It's a kind of skipper, and its host plant is cheeseweed. You know what cheeseweed is? It's not a native plant, it's a weed. It's literally a weed. But it has other host plants that are native. But I think that's why I had them. They're tiny little things. But
Any
no
plant?
insects otherwise in terms of
Interesting.
pests.
Any plans for an eco lawn?
Well, that's what the backyard, that one area between the house and the vegetable garden, I'm putting in this year a buffalo grass lawn. And I don't know if anyone's familiar with that. It's a short grass, prairie grass. It's not, you still need watering like once a month. It only grows about 5 inches tall or maybe less, so you don't have to mow it much. And I think it's High Country Garden where I was going to buy that. I haven't um, gotten that all figured out yet, but um, they've bred it. Somebody says they had a buffalo garden grass in their Denver yard. Yeah. Um, Keep it contained. Okay. I am going to put edging on it. Yeah, so that's all. That would be the lawn that I'll have.
And have you planted any sedum or stone crop?
In my irrigated perennial bed, I did have some sedum in the front beds, but they died. They're not that drought tolerant. So yeah, you wouldn't think that, but they need more than 8 inches of rain.
That's not much.
Yeah.
I think you've answered all the other questions. Anybody else has any? We'll call it a night. And Natalie, thank you so very much. And really appreciate it. I was jotting notes quickly too.
Yeah. Thanks
I'm glad it came out time-wise.
Perfect.
and thank you everyone for joining us. Have a great rest of your evening.
Good night.
All right. Bye-bye.